Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. What is a scary or horrifying fact that shouldn't be true, but is? Snails have thousands of teeth. There is more actual lemon juice in lemon-scented pledge spray than there is in Country Time lemonade. All these comments will be read by a robotic voice and played on YouTube. This will also cause many students to procrastinate by listening to that video. In the NT, Australia, I remember seeing a government warning that crocodiles inhabit the area. Among the few bullet points of advice on the sign, the last one read, "If they see you, it is already too late." Every single year, there are thousands of people in the US alone who disappear. Most of them show up again, usually the next day, but sometimes a few days, a few weeks, or even a few months later. However, out of these thousands of people, there are roughly 150 people, every single year, who disappear and simply never appear again. Nobody knows what has happened to those people. They might be dead, they might not be, we simply don't know. Over 150 dead bodies of climbers are still on Mount Everest. There are more Panda Express locations in the world than actual panda bears. A lone pilot was flying in Australia in 1978. He reported to air traffic control that he was accompanied by an aircraft above him. When asked to identify the aircraft, he replied, "It isn't an aircraft." His plane disappeared, and was never to be found again. Pigs can dispose of a body with relative ease. If a person gets bitten by an animal who has rabies, he will continue to live on a normal life for 12 weeks, and after the symptoms develop, there is no way he's making out alive. You'll know you're gonna die. One of the experiments the Japanese did during World War II at Unit 731 was cutting off limbs of living, waking people without anesthesia and sewing those limbs onto other prisoners. They also infected male prisoners with various infectious diseases, then forced them at gunpoint to rape pregnant prisoners to see if the disease would transmit to the baby. The sperm whale is the loudest creature on Earth at 230 decibels. Like louder than all the other SHD humans get up to. The Tsar bomb, the loudest explosion ever detonated by humanity, was 6 decibels quieter at 224. Sperm whales can produce sound waves so powerful it can kill you, though apparently, they have been known to use their inside voices around human divers. They whisper around us so they don't hurt us. How about that? Some monks used to endure a spiritual practice whereby they eliminated all their body fat through diet and exercise, ate woodlacker tea to kill off internal bacteria, then sealed themselves in a tomb holding a string attached to a bell. A year after the bell stopped ringing, the tomb was opened, and if the monk's body was found to be uncorrupted, they were revered as a saint. If not, they were reburied. The process took years, and as they continued, the monks required more and more help from their brothers until they entered the tomb. And the whole time you'd hear bells ringing from the nearby tombs as the monks inside slowly wound down the last days of their lives, voluntarily poisoned, starved, and buried alive for a chance at sainthood. Dylan Klebold, one of the killers of the Columbine massacre, attended the school's prom 3 nights before the shooting. When he got home, he was talking to his mom and showed her the flask he'd brought to prom, explaining that they'd only drank a little bit. He told her, "I just wanted you to know you can trust me." It's so chilling that he could say that and less than 72 hours later participate in the killing of 13 other people and himself. 60% of murders are unsolved here in Pakistan. We simply don't have the technology and training of the police officers in the West. Khalid El-Masri is a German and Lebanese citizen who was mistakenly abducted by the Macedonian police in 2003, and handed over to the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. While in CIA custody, he was flown to Afghanistan, where he was held at a black site and routinely interrogated, beaten, strip-searched, sodomized, and subjected to other cruel forms of inhumane and degrading treatment and torture. After El-Masri held hunger strikes, and was detained for 4 months in the salt pit, the CIA finally admitted his arrest and torture were a mistake and released him. He is believed to be among an estimated 3,000 detainees whom the CIA abducted from 2001 to 2005. In May 2004, the U.S. ambassador to Germany, Daniel R. Coates, convinced the German Interior Minister, Otto Schily, not to press charges or to reveal the program. El-Masri filed suit against the CIA for his arrest, extraordinary rendition and torture. In 2006, his suit El-Masri v. Tenet, in which he was represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, was dismissed by the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia, based on the U.S. government's claiming the state secrets privilege. The ACLU said the Bush administration attempted to shield its abuses by invoking this privilege. The case was also dismissed by the Appeals Court for the Fourth Circuit, and in December 2007, the United States Supreme Court declined to hear the case. On December 13, 2012, El-Masri won an Article 34 case at the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. The court determined he had been tortured while held by CIA agents and ruled that Macedonia was responsible for abusing him while in the country, and knowingly transferring him to the CIA when torture was a possibility. It awarded him compensation, which was FCK-all. This marked the first time that CIA activities against detainees was legally declared as torture. The European Court condemned nations for collaborating with the United States in these secret programs. Something is eating the Milky Way galaxy. No, it isn't a plot for a Star Trek episode, it's really happening. In 2009, researchers found a cluster of galaxies moving at an extraordinary speed towards a small patch of sky between the constellations of Centaurus and Vela. Some unknown force is tearing away chunks of the galaxy, and astronomers still have no clue what exactly is causing it. It's been named dark flow. There is something big out there, far bigger than anything in our known universe. Such a behemoth would impose a kind of tilt on the universe, causing matter to move in one particular direction, as observations of the dark flow suggest. Could be anything, up to and including another universe. When you get a sunburn, your cells are dying to avoid becoming cancerous. Space is so big our minds literally can't comprehend the size of it. 51 is divisible by 17. A koala's cuddle could give you chlamydia. The actual scientific cure for hiccups is anal massaging, and it works. You know how utterly batshit crazy Florida is? Actually, all states are that crazy. It's just that Florida has rather lax privacy laws regarding legal matters, so they report it. Within 3 days of death, the enzymes from your digestive system begin to digest your body. You could die at any moment without any notice, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Google fired 2 of their leaders in the AI ethics team for publishing articles about the dangers of an AI Google supported. In December 2020, Mitchell and Gebru were working on a paper about the dangers of large language processing models when Megan Kokolia, vice president of Google Brain, asked that the article be retracted. Gebru pushed back, saying the company needed to be more open about why the research wasn't acceptable. Shortly afterwards, she was fired, though Google characterized her departure as a resignation. So they did leak important information, but I'd say it was an excuse, not the actual reason. Every time unemployment goes up 1%, 40,000 people die. The Big Short. The troposphere is the layer closest to Earth's surface. It is 4 to 12 miles, 7 to 20 kilometers, thick and contains half of Earth's atmosphere. That is where our oxygen is. That is where we live. It is like we live in an aquarium, but we keep shitting in it all the time and there is no one to clean the filters. There are at least 2 genocides taking place right now on this planet, and dozens have happened since World War II ended. The government covered up a lot of crimes. An unbelievable number of people who die of dehydration do so with a fair amount of fresh water in their possession. It takes up to 10 minutes to drown in salt water. It's estimated that at least 1 in 7 children in the US has experienced child abuse and/or neglect in the past year. Neglect is the most common form of child abuse, followed by physical abuse, sexual abuse, and psychological abuse. The son will someday die. Being gay is illegal in 69 countries. In 7 of those countries, homosexuality is punishable by death. The average American consumes over 150 pounds of sugar every year. Whatever the SHD is at the bottom of the ocean, seriously, we know so little about this place and we've seen so much murderous SHD down there that we've only scratched the surface on how much nightmare fuel is actually down there. The oubliette, French, or the forgotten room is translated in English. In medieval times, people would be descended into these rooms, which were like 35 feet deep below the ground, as punishment. They were narrow, funnel-shaped, with the only way in or out being through a trapdoor on the roof, through which they are lowered down in the first place. Kings and lords would torture people by keeping them in the oubliette because these rooms would be so narrow there would be no space to sit or even turn. These prisoners would be left there to starve, while standing 24 hours and 7 days a week, to their death, sometimes among the bones and human wastes of the inmates who had died before them. The only light, if there was any, would come from the trapdoor on the roof. There would be absolutely no chance of escape as it was impossible to climb up the walls of the narrow passage. These were designed to inflict tremendous psychological torture on the prisoner, often leading them into delirium, absolute horror as to what we are capable of doing to our fellow human beings. If you get murdered, you have a slim chance of the killer being found. You might feel like the healthiest person in the world and yet still randomly die in your sleep. Sudden arrhythmic death syndrome is just one example. There are tons of small obstructions and irregularities that your heart could be suffering from that go completely unnoticed by you, your friends, and your doctors. You might be at an increased risk of just passing on when you go to bed tonight, and no one would even suspect as much until you actually died. A gamma-ray burst in space can release more energy than the sun in the whole lifetime produces, so, nuclear weapons are just a tiny little toy compared to these GBRs. Even supernovas don't reach that much power. This is far beyond any scale. If the average person understood our monetary system, there would be revolution tomorrow. Henry Ford, the partial reserve banking system is actually the biggest theft of wealth in human history. Marital rape is still not a crime in 36 countries including India. Every 60 seconds in Africa, a minute passes. Terrifying. People starve to death every day while we produce more than enough food to feed them all. When you have scurvy, all your old scars and wounds open up, due to the vitamin needed to maintain scar tissue. So for me, for example, I had my jaw dislocated and my gums cut open from cheek to remove wisdom teeth. If I got scurvy, I would bleed uncontrollably from the inside of my mouth out. What would be your most horrifying scar? On average, spiders swallow 8 human beings per year in their sleep. The existence of people who believe that the Earth is flat, despite the overwhelming amount of evidence that it isn't. There are more slaves today than there were during the transatlantic slave trade era. In Mississippi and some parts of Florida, there is a bacteria in the water at the coast that will literally eat your flesh off of you. Florida is much safer than Mississippi though. At least, in that aspect. There is a mosquito in Florida that, when it bites you, can make your brain swell inside your skull and can possibly kill you. Virtually everybody has the capacity to kill, they just haven't been put under the circumstances where it would be a preferable option. An estimated 1.5 billion disposable masks entered the oceans last year, and that's on top of a dramatic increase in other single-use plastics. In Argentina we have no DNA bank and a barely functional fingerprint detection system, even though we invented that bitch. Also, negligence by forensics is the norm. What does this mean? In Argentina, if you kill someone you don't like, but the cops never suspect you, you'll never ever be remotely close to being busted. In fact, anyone could get away with murdering a stranger at any time without previous preparation, and if they somehow catch you red-handed, a life sentence is 35 years here with parole every couple of years, and there's a law that says that by every 2 people that get incarcerated 1 must be freed, so there's always the chance you'll get randomly freed. Also, the average time a killer does here is between 10 and 20 years. The fact that we don't murder each other as much means anarchy could possibly work, I guess. People are capable of exacting horrific pain and suffering upon each other, for absolutely no reason whatsoever. The fact that the American government had a program to sterilize Native Americans without their knowledge to prevent natives from having children. And this was only 50 years ago. There's a place on Mount Everest called the Rainbow Valley, which takes its name not from the rainbows that you see from it but from the colors of the jackets of hundreds and hundreds of corpses that lay across the valley. Pretty scary. The Indian cheetah and Sumatran rhino were among some of the species that went extinct in 2019, along with Chinese paddlefish, Yangtze giant soft-shell turtle, Spix macaw, Catarina pupfish, Indo-Chinese tiger. Go into your calendar app. Scroll 150 or so years into the future. You will not see those days. Those birthdays for your friends and family that repeat? Yeah, those won't matter anymore. Now, you might be thinking, but with modern medicine I might live that long. But no. You almost certainly will not. If you want to contemplate your own mortality, open your app, and find some random Wednesday in June of 2185. And think of all the things that will happen that day, that you won't be seeing. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.